Correct. Yes. Everything is I like my name.
Hello.
Hey, good morning.
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay. Okay, let me get my presentation up.
So which slide you want to be?
Yeah, let me get it up. Just a minute. So you're also splitting the screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So basically, we talked about all the different kinds of methods there are for business to get connected with the consumer. And we talked about the fact that, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of companies that are focused on helping uh, companies that are interested in doing a B2C business to connect with their audience. There are agencies, there are networks like Google and Facebook, there are platforms, social media platforms, there are people that provide data. So there are all kinds of companies that provide all of this information, and it's probably $1 trillion business that provides these kinds of services. So it's a huge business, and there's a lot of startups in this space. A lot of startups in this space that only focus on helping startup, not only startups, but even large companies do a B2C business, right? And now we were talking about, let's see, about what are the different issues that B2C company needs to be familiar with. For example, we talked about ScalFin, right? And the challenge for ScalFin is to figure out what is the most cost-effective way by which ScalFin can get basically their consumers to sign up, and then concurrently to get their scholarship providers to sign up. So they've got both entities to sign up, and the question is, what is the right way to do it? And consumers, the lifetime value of a consumer is going to be pretty low, so you really cannot afford to have a sales effort in order to sign up a consumer, right? So consumers, you have to get in a very cost-effective way. While if you look at the scholarship providers, one scholarship provider can provide scholarship for maybe 100 or 1,000 people, maybe for a 10 or 20-year period. So people that provide scholarships, you can use a more expensive approach in order to acquire. So you can see that, for different entities, because they provide different lifetime value, you use different methods. Some are more effective than the others. So if you look at the options that you have, so we will just go through the different ways by which B2C company is going to acquire consumers, right, or customers or prospects. So basically, I'm on the paid acquisition slide.
Yeah.
So on the paid acquisition, you can see that you have your search mechanism, you got your Facebook, you got display ads and mobile ad networks, and the methods can be just search, where you put keywords on your website. Display is where you put in ads, that pop-up ads, and all of you have seen pop-up ads. You incentivize, where you basically motivate, you inform. You basically sign up with Facebook or somebody, or even Google, and say that you will pay so much per click, and they will automatically put money there. And so there are many different techniques in order to go ahead and do paid acquisition. And the question is, which one do you use? And so sometimes the answer is obvious, and you go ahead and use that technique. In other case, you have to try it out as to which, should you advertise on LinkedIn? Should you do a CPI method on LinkedIn? Should you do a CPI search paid acquisition on Facebook, Facebook, or do a Google search-based CPI, where they will put your ad at the top of every search for a particular keyword. But you'll see that if you go to search, which is the next slide, when the top phrases that give you the top quote is very expensive. For example, when we were at Dino, we were trying to go ahead and use some common keywords, which is like video streaming. The cost of being a head search phrase, which is the one that will allow you to be in this yellow box at the top, which is when you do a search, you notice that one or two search results come right at the top. Basically, the CPI used to be almost like $1 or $2 every time it showed up. So you can see that, the speed at which your money is going to run out. And so basically, that can be very expensive. And so essentially, we couldn't afford it. And we had to go and use, just standard keyword searches, so that, we can pop up, and then we can try and do relevance, be very relevant, so that, we would show up on the right-hand side. The right-hand side is not a paid for service. So basically, like, we would go ahead and use, different techniques in order to get it. Now, in order to get companies that actually give scholarships out, Scolfin can actually consider paying the money to get the head search ad, right? So that's how you basically do it. So going to the next slide is that in order to optimize the results, you have to basically do deep targeting of the creative. Creative is the advertising that you put, which is the words that you use, the image that you put, the title that you put, and the landing page, the page that somebody clicks and where it lands, is very important. The web page does not have to land on the first page. It can land at any page that you want on your website, and that is extremely important, because they have done studies which show that people look at the landing page for maybe 20 seconds, and in 20 seconds they decide whether they are interested in going deeper into it or jumping out of it. So basically, you can see that here is some good data about how you're supposed to keep your ads. So um, uh, uh, you have to keep your ads dynamic, and it tells you the speed at which ads can deteriorate in terms of CPC and CTR. Um, can somebody tell me what CPC and CTR are? What's CPC and CTR? Anybody? So CPC stands for cost per click, right? So cost per click is how much you would pay every time a visitor goes ahead and clicks on that ad that either Facebook puts up or Google puts you up in the first place. So, and the CTR is the click-through rate. That means if you put up 20 ads, or if 100 people see it, and only one person clicks on the banner ad, that becomes the CTR. And so basically, if you go back, if you look at the slide, the click-through rate, CTR, declines by 50% within 2 days after an ad is released. So it tells you that you have to basically people get tired of ads, right? So you have to keep on changing ads. I don't know if you guys have seen ads in your news feed. So there was a time when Facebook never used to put ads in news feed, and news feeds were much cleaner. But now, if you notice, every sixth or seventh news feed item is a ad, and because Facebook knows your personality pretty well, because they look at who your friends are, what their interests are, what your education is, what your sex is, what your approximate age is based on your education. They can basically provide very targeted placement of ads, and you can see that the ad can have a video, can have a photograph, can have a little description, can have a click. So you can see that Facebook can provide some amazingly targeted advertising. And so Facebook used to basically not make any money till they had close to, I think, about 700 or 800 million users. So they were just because they knew that if once they start putting in ads, people are going to be upset and are going to be turned off from Facebook. So what Facebook did was they waited till they got about 700-800 million users, and then they started putting in ads. And the very first quarter that they put in ads, they made $1 billion in advertising. And the next quarter they made 1.5, and the quarter after that they made 2. So just by putting in newsfeed ads and then putting in banner ads inside, essentially, Facebook made that money. But clearly, somebody has to pay for it, and when we try to use Facebook for advertising for Dino, we found that the speed at which Facebook would consume your $500 per day budget that we had put was like in 20 minutes, $500 were gone, and we had virtually no click-throughs. And we put it on Facebook. Essentially, does all that advertising on click-through only. and basically not just putting in banner ads. They basically, that was another nice thing that Facebook did for advertising, which is they bill you only on click through. So they put your ad and people have to click. But so many people on Facebook were just clicking through once, coming to the landing page, and no action. So, you know, it could be either our problem or Facebook's problem, but we were kind of disappointed with the result, and we just did not have that kind of money to spend. So you can see that internet advertising is actually very sophisticated, can be very expensive when you go into the paid method. But you know, I have a counter example where so go to the next slide, organic SEO.
Yeah.
So there was another company that I was on the board of called AppStream, and AppStream used to provide the ability to do virtual applications, so that, you know, everybody does not have to, for example, license an SAP. Basically, so applications could actually be streamed rather than actually installed. So that was a very interesting company. And in that company, you know, basically our target market was schools, because, you know, you don't want to install a application like Word or Excel on every student's laptop. That makes it very expensive, and students cannot afford lots of money for buying all these Microsoft apps. So basically, the idea was that every school would buy one copy of Microsoft Office, and then AppStream would go ahead and allow all the students to use that one copy. So, but basically, like, you know, the cost that each school could afford was around $10,000 or $20,000. And, you know, initially we tried a direct sales method, but we found that each salesman could only close about 5 or 10 customers, and the cost for each sales team is a couple of $100,000, and we were losing so much money on our sales side that the company essentially almost went bankrupt. And that's when we decided that, you know, the problem is not the product or the technology, but the problem was was uh, uh, our sales method. So we started, the person in red shirt. I think you're sleeping. Uh, so yeah, so it was important to figure out, you know, how we would reach these schools, because there are thousands of schools, right? And so what we found is that by putting in a good website and then putting in keywords, these schools would actually find AppStream by themselves, and our cost of sales essentially dropped to virtually zero. And you know, we started getting orders, and within a year or two, Symantec bought us for about $60 million. So you can see that for a certain kind of product and certain kind of company, search is wonderful. So the lesson that we got was
There
that,
is a question.
yeah, just let me finish, was that for long tail marketing, and I'm going to ask you guys a question as to give me examples of long tail marketing, and for niche products which are difficult to find. So for these kinds of products, which are targeted for very small uh, 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 where the customer is scattered all over, for these kinds of companies, SEO is perfect. So what does SEO stand for? Search engine optimization. Okay. So how you optimize your search, SEO, search engine optimization. So you can see that, for certain kinds of companies, startups, SEO is their only hope. Okay, so what was the question?
Sir, I assume like almost half of the people who are sitting here, they use Adblock on all these platforms. So they can't even see the ads that come. So let's say I am a very small startup, like we want to do this kind of thing, and my targeted customers are using this Adblock. So how should I proceed?
Yes, so there are two kinds of ad block. Ad block is when you browse on websites, you can do ad block so that pop-up ads are blocked. On the other hand, ad block does not work on specific social media applications like Facebook, and nor do they work on Google search results, right? So when you do a Google search result, ad block does not work, right? Because it's a part of the search results. So you can see that these companies, Google and Facebook, have essentially become the leaders in online advertising because there is no way for the consumer to block the ad, and then also for consumers can also be targeted very properly because essentially the application, the search application or Facebook application, knows the user so well, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so give me examples of companies where SEO is going to work, where search engine optimization is going to work. Give me some examples of companies. Actually, okay. So let's see. The person in the first row, the girl in the first row. Give me an example of a company that goes ahead and does search engine optimization. And we had one of those case studies come and present to us. And why? Yeah, I'm looking at you. Yeah.
Certain scholarships.
No. Yeah, so it could probably work for scholarships. Yes. Basically, people who are searching for scholarships could do it. But we had a very good case study in long tail marketing, and for them, search engine optimization was the key to their success, right? So, which company was that? Exactly, Chicky Chunk umbrellas, because they provided custom umbrellas, and they address a very small niche of customers, and this niche of customers essentially is what is called the long tail. So in a market, you have the main market, which is the big body of the market, which uses the lowest cost umbrella, which is black umbrellas. And then you have the tail, which is a very small part of the market, the one but which is most interested in some quality issues or in fashion issues rather than just protection from rain. And for the long tail, search engine is the right way to go. Any other examples of long tail marketing that will work maybe for any of your projects? Do you think any of your companies uh, would long tail marketing, would the search engine optimization work or paid acquisition work? See, there were 9 companies. So, yeah, go ahead.
So can I ask a question? What are the companies for which this method would not work? Because it's usually applicable for every company, or perhaps more so for certain others. But is there any company for whom this is not applicable?
Okay, so basically, like, if you are basically going ahead and selling a mainstream product, like, for example, if you look at Dino, right? We were doing a mainstream product, which is online TV. And if we ended up going ahead and having paid advertising for our things, we would be right at the top of anytime somebody said video streaming or online TV, we would be at the top, but that would become too expensive because Google was charging close to $1 or $2 every time their ad showed up, right? So we would go broke uh, uh, if we tried to do that. On the other hand, when we did not do paid advertising for video streaming with all our keywords and all that, we were on page 20, right? So if you're on page 20, there is no way that the consumer is going to find you. So we got 0 results from our search keywords. So you'll see that for mainstream products, which are not very unique, you either have to be a big company that can afford paid search, or this SEO does not work because you're going to be on the last page. You're going to be on page 20 or worse, right? And virtually no search person who's doing a search is going to go to page, maybe even page 2 or 3 is very rarely that people go through.
So I think it's very closely tied to the question of how exactly is your product different. If your product is differentiated from the rest, then that would be the way to approach it. Is that the right way of looking at it?
Differentiated is one way, but actually the key word that explains the kind of company you are is long tail, which means you address a small number of customers with very specific needs that are not easy to find, right? So that's called long tail marketing. Typically, these are markets that were ignored by any market. If it exists, will already have companies targeting them. So typically, the market where an entrepreneur can find opportunity is in the long tail, which is customers are scattered all over the world, and they've got very specific needs, and there is no way to find them, or there's no way for them to find you. So these are the kinds of companies that customers that were typically ignored by all the mainstream companies. So for example, if you are a book publisher that publishes Indian architecture in 500 BC. So if you provide books which are focused on Indian culture in 500 BC, there are probably 500 history professors and researchers that may be interested in this book, even though the book might give you 95% gross margin because it sells for 10,000 rupees and it costs you, 500 rupees to make. To find these 500 or 5,000 researchers or collectors is very hard, right? So that becomes a long tail market, and that becomes a book that is not going to be uh, uh, written or published by mainstream history book publishers, right? So basically, long tail is characterized by kind of scattered consumers. They are all over the place. They are scattered all over. There are very few of them, but they're willing to pay a good amount of money to get their needs satisfied. And they've got a deep need for the product. So these people will actually do a search for you. And before Google came along, it was very hard for these people to find their product. But now with Google search and other search applications, you can do it. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So the next organic search method is called App Store optimization. And basically, like, you know, you basically end up, getting your gains or whatever it is, uh, your gains or whatever application you have to move to the top. Again, just like normal search, uh, the most important thing is to be in the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 listings, because most consumers are going to click on the first few results, right? So if you look at Google App Store, if you look at all of these places, ranking is the key to your success. And it's based on all of these characteristics, which is title, keywords, installs, ratings. And even here, if you go for mainstream titles, you'll find that if you just say video games for Google Apps, there's no way that you're going to move to the top, right? Like, it's all totally occupied by people like Candy Crush and things like that. On the other hand, if you come up with a keyword which is like which might be like, let's say, uh, you know uh, online gambling or something. Or if you come up with a word like if you had a game like rummy or teen patti or something like that, or poker is already used up. But if you look at some other kinds of very specific games, then you can move to the top of that, because there'll be very small number of people in that particular category. So App Store optimization has got similar characteristics like SEO. So again, in order to succeed with the App Store optimization, it needs to be a long tail kind of a product solution. Okay, going on to the virality. Hello? Yeah?
Sir, I would like to actually add something to it.
Sure.
Recently, I had a talk with a CPC guy, and we were asking him that how he managed to sell an umbrella so fast. He was telling us that for the keywords, he put all the spellings of the umbrellas and the designers. Like, he thought how a Bengali guy would type designer. Like, he actually spelled it designer, and different spellings he used for the same word just to improve the keywords and improve the search engine. So he was like on the top 10 list of the Amazon. When he listed his product on Amazon, he was in the top 10 searches just because he was using different spellings and different ways to
Yeah, that's so actually, I would recommend that you go to Pratik Doshi's Facebook page, uh, and look at his posts. And one of his posts is top 10 ways to succeed with e-commerce platform advertising. So just like you got your Google search advertising, you got your App Store advertising, you also have your e-commerce platform advertising. So e-commerce platform advertising, Pratik has written a very good blog of, and which he's posted on his Facebook page, of the top 10 methods for succeeding with e-commerce platform ranking and rating. Same thing like, that we talked about with search and with app stores, is that you have to be on the first page or the top 5 or 10 postings on Amazon if you're going to, or Flipkart or Snapdeal or wherever, if you're going to, successfully leverage that channel. Okay, let's move on to virality. So again, with virality, essentially, we are not doing the advertising. The company is not doing the advertising. The person that does the advertising or promotion is actually your user, and it becomes a word of mouth by somebody who's very happy with your product. And the important thing is the number of invites that the person who's excited about your product puts out, and what is the conversion rate. So you have your virality coefficient K, which is average number of invites times conversion rate. So you can see that, if the conversion rate is 1, which means if every person puts out basically um, if every person who likes your product puts out only 1 invite and that converts, then you get, a chart that is pretty much a straight line chart. But if 1.1, which means that basically if for every person who puts out who likes your product puts out 10% more, which is 1.1 number of invites, and they convert, then you start getting an exponential increase, and that is what you want to go for. And if you like, I remember that, LinkedIn, when LinkedIn got started, the biggest challenge for LinkedIn was how do they get more users to get onto their platform, right? So LinkedIn actually decided to target companies or organizations that would have a lot of users in the target market. So I was the president of TIE in Silicon Valley. So LinkedIn came to TIE and said, how do we convince TIE to go ahead and promote LinkedIn to all its users? Because, we had about 2,000 potential member entrepreneurs, and we had about 300 charter members who are already, running companies. So they looked at TIE as a very good opportunity to basically get virality going. Each TIE charter member would have a few hundred or a few thousand employees that can all, get their resumes onto LinkedIn and so on, right? Or get their profiles onto LinkedIn. So they were actually willing to do all kinds of services for TIE in order to get us hooked onto LinkedIn so that, essentially, the virality that we would generate by using LinkedIn would make them successful. So essentially LinkedIn uh, used uh, used the fact that um, they would ask you to basically send invites to all your friends, and that's how they got their virality. They leverage virality in order to spread and get all the users and become worth over $10 billion when they went public. So virality is absolutely key element to a B2C customer company. And if you look at WhatsApp, if you look at Snapchat, if you look at LinkedIn, if you look at Twitter, all of these companies have succeeded because of virality. If they were not viral and they did not figure out how to, even Dropbox succeeded because of virality, right? They give you 100 or 200 gigabytes, they incentivize. So companies like Dropbox actually incentivize by giving you 100 or 200 megabytes of extra storage every time you uh, invite a friend to use or access your Dropbox website, and if they sign up to use Dropbox, you get, and that resulted in them acquiring, going from basically a startup to almost 100 million users in about 3 years. And right now they are probably around 500 or 600 million users. So you can see that, it's an expensive way of doing it. But in Dropbox case, if you are giving away something that is not very actively used, uh, so for example, like, Dropbox gives you 100 megabytes for free, but they've already given you 2 gigabytes initially. So 100 megabytes is probably not going to be used, even though they've given you the space, right? So sometimes you can give away things where the usage is so low that the real cost is much lower, but the attractiveness is much higher. Okay, move on to retention. So we talked about the fact that in the B2C market, there are 2 or 3 factors that are important. One is acquiring the user, getting them to sign up. Second one is uh, their activity level on that particular platform. And number 3 is the retention. So how long do they actually stay on your platform before moving on? So, there was a time when there were about 8 or 10 different search companies in the industry, and all of them were worth $1 billion, $2 billion, and so on. And then Google comes along, and Google became so popular because of some of the things that they did in their search application that even though all the other companies had millions of consumers using their service, they just stopped using them, right? So essentially, all the searches went from all these 8 or 10 companies that were all public companies worth billions of dollars. They lost all the users, and suddenly Google basically became the dominant search company. So retention becomes the key, and you have to do a lot of things in order to get the retention. So, for example, the example that's given here is the taxi business, right? And uh, So basically, you got Ola, you got Uber, you got taxi for hire, you got all of these different services, and they're all B2C companies. And the thing is that they succeed only if, number one, they get a lot of consumers. Number two, they're consumers that don't change. So if you get a bad service from an Uber taxi driver, you're going to switch to Ola cabs. If Ola cabs gives you, is not there when you want it, you're going to go back. You're going to go to Uber. So the thing is that retention becomes the key, and remembering, whoever you remember is the taxi service that you're going to order. So basically, it's very important to keep awareness going. And that awareness is done through push notifications, email, social media. So for example, Facebook, the reason that we check all the time is because we keep getting those push notifications. Same thing with WhatsApp. So essentially, email, we all, if somebody bothers us too much, we put them into the spam folder. So there's so many conflicting things that are going on in the retention area, and the marketer for B2C has to be very sensitive and aware of how to deliver the message at the right time, the right medium, in order to make it a successful channel. Let's go on to press. So again, we had one of the case studies that the company was saved because of the press. Can somebody tell me which startup succeeded because of press? Anybody? Okay. Any students? Which startup succeeded because of the press? Huh? Yeah.
Chiki Chunk.
Yes, exactly. Cheeky Chunk. And basically, like, the message, the message that Pratik Doshi gave was that, essentially he was trying to figure out how to become popular, how to get his umbrella launched. So he wrote 5 different stories highlighting different aspects of his company. And he was lucky enough to get, one editor go ahead and launch his thing. So it becomes, press is it's, if you get the right story in the right place, on the right channel, on the right newspaper, it can be a fantastic result for you. But you just have to be very prepared in order to launch it with the right amount of energy, momentum, and it can also be expensive. So for example, like, when I was in the chipset business with Opti, uh, it was very important to go ahead and launch our new products uh, uh, at the right time, because if every time there was a new microprocessor from Intel, there would be a new motherboard or a new chipset that would have to be designed. And the company that was the first to launch the product was the one that would get the cover story in all the electronic magazines and newspapers. So, however, if you launch your product before the product is available, you get a lot of momentum, but you get no business because when the customer or potential prospective customer calls you up, you say, hey, we've launched it, but the product will be available in 3 months. And, all of a sudden, you've got the awareness, but no business. And when the product is finally available and you put out a press release saying that, hey, I launched the product 3 months ago, but the product is available right now, guess what? You get zero coverage in the newspaper because the newspaper says, hey, we've already launched that product. We are not going to go ahead and you're not going to go ahead and put your story because it's not an interesting story anymore. So you'll see that that Cheeky Chunk press story and launch worked because number one, the rains were coming, which means the demand was there. Number two, he had 10,000 umbrellas sitting in the warehouse. So basically, when you have a matching of the demand and the supply, that is when it's a perfect launch. And there are times when lots of companies pre-launch their product. There are lots of times when they launch the product after it's available, but it's not interesting because there are other competitors who have launched the product before you. So this whole managing the press is a skill and an art. Okay, let's go to the next slide, move faster. So in the B2C business, the key success factor is that, users are very, need to be excited all the time. They need to, which means that there needs to be new stuff putting in front of them all the time. So essentially, if you look at the method that is used, see, in a normal company, product development is done step by step, which means that you first have a marketing person who figures out the need, then he writes a specification, then the engineer designs the product, then QA tests the product, and then you release it to production. So it's like a 6 month, 1 year, 2 year kind of product development cycle. Now, in this B2C market, you need to innovate almost once every week or 2 weeks. And if you have so many different people who are involved in defining, designing, and testing and launching a product, it becomes very inefficient. So there's a whole new class of software developers and product developers that have now come into being. So essentially, you have the software engineer is also somebody who's smart with marketing. So he's also a product manager. He can understand what the customer needs are and what the user needs are. And then he can quickly prototype it and develop it. And then he can also quickly kind of, test it and get it out there. So basically, there is a whole new breed of software engineers that has come into the marketplace, who are designer, hacker, product manager, and essentially entrepreneur packed in one. In fact, the reason you are in this class is because you are one of those people. You are not only an engineer, but you are also somebody who is learning marketing, who is learning, selling, who's learning how to build a company, who's learning how to test a product, who's learning how to buy a product, who's learning how to negotiate. So basically, you are kind of the next generation of software engineer or mechanical engineer or product engineer or electrical engineer. So you are, this is how the world, uh, these are the kinds of people that the world needs, because the world is going now faster and faster because of the fact that the internet is there, which provides you the ability to connect with consumers and potential customers at the speed of light, right? So essentially the world is moving faster in terms of the speed at which things are done, and there's a need now for a person to have multiple skills all packed in one head, right? Or one person. So that is, so the employees that you hire also need to be of this type. You yourself are already, multifaceted, but the team members that you get also need to have that personality. If somebody says, "Hey, I'm a software programmer. Tell me what to do. I'll write the best software program." Um, he is less useful these days than somebody who, can also understand what the customer needs are, can also do his own testing, can also get friends to do alpha testing, beta testing for him, and those kinds of software engineers are very important. The next important thing for a B2C company is to leverage on new platforms that are coming up. So there was a time when somebody would write a video game, and then they would go ahead and put it on the internet and say, "Okay, I've got this wonderful video game. Why don't you download it from my website?" And that worked really well during the early days of the video game business. But then, there were so many video game suppliers with their own websites that only the biggest ones and the ones that had the most brand name succeeded. Like um, uh, which are these companies? Which company makes War of the World, or Call of Duty and all that? Anybody know who makes these?
EA,
Which company?
EA games.
You guys play these games. I don't play these games.
Activision.
Activision, exactly. So companies like Activision and others, which are multi-billion-dollar companies, only they can actually leverage their websites in order to promote their product. So on the other hand, there are entrepreneurs coming up with new and exciting video games all the time. So, for example, what Zynga did was they put their game on Facebook and promoted it on Facebook, and then Candy Crush did the same thing. And you can see that they have become even bigger than Activision. And the reason is that Activision, which was too comfortable and successful on the internet platform, that Activision never offered their video games, and maybe they do it right now. I'm not sure, but they're still nowhere near Zynga or Candy Crush in terms of success on Facebook. Uh, so the thing is that there are new platforms coming up all the time, and some of the new platforms that are important at this point are applications like Google Glass. The reason, for example, that Dropbox succeeded was because Apple had their own game plan with iCloud, so they were not giving Dropbox any unique benefit. So my son, who was VP of marketing, essentially said, "Why don't we go to the number two company, Samsung, and offer them an opportunity to go ahead and uh, get a Dropbox pre-installed on every Samsung phone." And as luck would have it, Samsung became the leader in smartphones, and Dropbox, which was pre-installed on all Samsung smartphones, started getting 40, 50 million users every quarter, because every smartphone user would automatically get a Dropbox account, and Dropbox became worth billions of dollars because they capitalized on the Samsung smartphone platform, right? So basically, every time there is a new platform that comes along, there's an opportunity to uh, get the first mover advantage, being the first person on that platform. So that, and new platforms are coming up all the time. For example, Google Glass has come along. Can somebody tell me of a new platform from Apple that has come along in the last year or so? iWatch is a very good one, and Apple TV is another good one, right? So Apple TV and iWatch are two excellent examples of new platforms. Um, can you tell me some new platforms that have come up in India? Anybody can tell me of a new platform that has come up in India? Come on, guys, you guys live there. Nobody? Which one?
Google Street View.
Sorry, I could not hear. What is it?
Google Street View, like it's written.
He's saying Google Street View.
Street View. Yeah, Street View, but I want to see, I want to ask you to think of some platform that is being developed by an Indian company for the Indian market that you would like to leverage on.
Akash tablet from IIT Bombay.
Exactly. Excellent. So you can see that Akash tablet from it's targeted for the Indian market, and and there's probably going to be something that students in schools as well as colleges and professors are all going to standardize on, and it's an excellent way for somebody who's developing applications for that market segment to go ahead and dominate. Think of something else. Uh, did you hear of a smart city initiative? What is the opportunity with the smart city initiative?
Automated roads.
So basically, there are going to be what, 100 smart cities, right?
Yes, sir.
So I think Nagpur is going to be a smart city, correct? So if Nagpur is a smart city, what does that mean? Isn't that a new platform for reaching consumers in Nagpur? So now you have a way to reach, almost, 1 crore consumers who live in Nagpur, because Nagpur is a smart city, is going to be a smart city, which means that, essentially every Nagpur person is going to be accessible via the internet, right? Or mobile internet. Because most of them are going to be mobile internet. So now when you have 1 crore Nagpurians who are all going to be accessible, you got a niche. Nagpur is a niche, right? And they are all going to be accessible via mobile internet. So remember, to have 1 crore mobile Nagpurians accessible by mobile internet means that some very unique requirements of people from Nagpur is going to be available for starting companies. So basically, as an entrepreneur, you should be thinking, okay, smart city gives me an opportunity to target people in Nagpur. So what services and products Nagpur people need that I can leverage the smart city initiative for, right? So you have to think of the fact that, as new platforms go into a very targeted area, it opens up opportunities for entrepreneurs. And that is the key to entrepreneurial success. So why don't we, now that I've described the consequence of Nagpur becoming a smart city, why don't you tell me, give me 3 examples of new entrepreneurial startups that are going to leverage Nagpur smart city?
Hello. So I could give one.
Which one?
Now that, yeah, I could give one. So now that we have a lot of smart cities, home automation is said to be like a really big thing. Home automation. So maybe there's potential in smart furniture. Because you have smart furniture. I mean, you have smart cities, so people are, they are thinking progressively. They are more acceptable. I mean, they would accept ideas like this. So then, home automation, we have companies existing. They're going to be big players. So perhaps maybe there's a good market for smart furniture.
I think it's pushing it a little bit, unless you can find a specific angle.
Always worth it, right?
See, what you have to think is you have to think out of the box. You have to think of how you started on the right track, which is, hey, I've got this idea of smart furniture. Now, how do I leverage my smart furniture idea or adapt my smart furniture idea to succeed because Nagpur becomes a smart city, right? So you started on the right track, which is, on the other hand, you may have to evolve your idea of smart furniture in order to leverage smart city. So for example, if you design your smart furniture so that all the services that are going to be available by Nagpur being a smart city is embedded on your furniture. For example, you put a little Akash-like tablet, which automatically, the first screen comes up as Nagpur city services that are automatically needed, like municipal corporators names and numbers, your telephone, your electric power, your grocery suppliers. if all of that information becomes kind of a little tablet right on your dining table or your kitchen table or whatever table you're providing, if it automatically comes up and which is accessible, and then it becomes like an advertising tool for all of these people. It provides, it goes ahead and becomes an information source that automatically kids can use. It can become an entertainment source because, you know, the electronic panel on the furniture automatically allows people to play the games. So basically you can see that you are thinking of how to adapt your startup to leverage this new smart city platform. You see what I've done to your idea?
Yes, sir. Sir, one of the ideas which we had was with all cloud platform and all getting so much traction. Now laptops may get obsolete in few years or something with smart cities everywhere. So something which can double the use of laptop when people use phones or their tabs for the same thing, and when they're at their workstations, they get the same experience as a laptop.
I didn't understand that. What do you mean?
Carrying a laptop everywhere is painful for some people. So and but the productivity of laptop is better. So we could with cloud platform and all people working right out of cloud. So it could be possible for people using phones or tablets to get the same experience that they get and the productivity that they get from laptops with the smart furniture. This could be a direction which.
Well, the benefit of smart city is the fact that, you know, one key element of smart city is that you don't have to carry your application and your storage on your computing device, right? Because the internet connectivity is so fast with 4G and so on that you are seamlessly connected to cloud storage and cloud computing. Does that make sense? So smart city actually is seamless connection with high-speed Wi-Fi networking to cloud storage and cloud computing and cloud security. So you can see that, you know, the actual the concept that you have, or the fact that smartphones and tablets are going to become as powerful or even more powerful than standalone tablets is absolutely correct, because, you know, a laptop is going to have maybe, you know, 10 gigabytes of storage or 100 gigabytes of disk storage, while cloud has got terabytes and thousands of terabytes of storage. And if you think of the computing power that you can have in the cloud, it can be gigaflops or mega gigaflops, while, you know, your laptop has only got, you know, so many, you know, 1 or 2 gigabits per second computing power. So you can see that essentially what smart city does is that it gives infinite storage and infinite computing to every person in Nagpur. Imagine that, for nothing, for virtually nothing. And now you have to think of how to leverage this new capability when 1 crore people are going to have infinite storage and infinite computing. And it's going to change Nagpur. In 5 years, you will not recognize Nagpur. But the question as an entrepreneur is, are you going to be the one who's going to be a user of smart city services? or a provider of smart city services? Are you going to become a successful businessman in Nagpur, or are you going to be a happy consumer in Nagpur? Of course, you can be both, because if you're a successful entrepreneur in Nagpur, you're going to be a very happy consumer in Nagpur also, right? So the whole goal is to actually be a very successful entrepreneur in Nagpur, in the smart city world that every Nagpur consumer is going to have in 3 years or so. Okay, so let's move on quickly. Uh, so let's go to B2B marketing, and we may have to continue this next week. But tell me, what's the difference between B2B and B2C? Anybody? B2B is business to business, and how is it different from B2C?
Customer segmentation in B2B is very defined and specific, whereas in B2C is
Why is it different?
in B2B we exactly focus a specific and defined target. For example, a company working on a platform, helping that company. Whereas in B2C, we have the scattered customers who's and they are spread all over the world. That is the key difference.
Yeah, so there are many differences, and the differences are that typically when you target a business, they have a very specific personality and specific requirements. Typically, so it's a concentrated. It's not 1 billion consumers. It's going to be more in the range of 100,000, 10,000, maybe even 100,000 companies. But it's not going to be it's not going to be 1 million companies. Sometimes you do have businesses where you're targeting 1 million companies. Give me an example of a company that is targeting 1 million businesses all over the world. SAP would be targeting more like 100,000. Give me something targeting 1 million companies all over the world.
Alibaba.com.
Who?
Alibaba.com.
Alibaba would be in the range of 1 million companies. Excellent. E-commerce platforms target, there are, I think, probably at least 1 million businesses that use Amazon for selling their product. So e-commerce platforms are a good example. A company like Facebook and Google target 1 million companies or more for getting advertising from these companies. So there are companies that target millions of companies. And for them, you have to be very careful that you do the right kind of marketing. You may have to use B2C marketing techniques rather than B2B marketing techniques, because you cannot have 100,000 salespeople calling on 1 million customers, right? So, because what you get from each consumer, each customer is a small amount of money. So basically, it's a continuum between B2C and B2B. And then give me examples of companies that have maybe only 5 customers or 10 customers. Give me an example of a company that has only got 5 customers or 10 customers. Or maybe even just 1 customer. How about that? Give me an example of a company that has only 1 customer.
companies working for Cisco in networking, lot of such companies.
I want somebody who's got only one potential customer.
Companies working for Cisco for networking.
So when you had the video streaming company, so you had planned to tie up with another company. So had that worked out, wouldn't that have been an example of a company working with just another company?
No, no,
When
no.
you were doing the
You know,
video
you can have many choices of your partner, right? So
you could have,
yeah. So I want you to name companies who target only one customer.
The Flare Bullets is one of the companies
Who?
who has started Flare Bullets. It's a patenting company and it has its customers in HP and Google.
So you already said two then. I want only one.
The companies doing networking for Cisco.
No, but he's got the ability to do networking for Microsoft also, right? So I want somebody who can only target one customer. Okay, if somebody is providing defense equipment, which is for the Indian government, you know, there's only one customer, the Defense Department in India, right? So if you're making, you know, missile equipment in India, you certainly cannot sell it to Pakistan, right? You can only sell it to the Indian Defense Department, right? So you can actually have companies that target only one customer. For example, one of the startups from IIT Bombay uh, 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 that was one of the first to develop a militarized drone, a drone that allows that had some very specific capabilities, and they designed it in conjunction with DRDO, and essentially it allows the Indian Army to go ahead and identify or locate terrorists who are trying to cross the POC in Kashmir, right? So they designed a drone, a militarized drone, with the help of DRDO to target to find terrorists who are crossing the POC uh, in Kashmir, and you know this particular drone company essentially had only one customer, which was the Indian Defense Department, and guess what? This company is now incredibly successful. Their revenues are over 30 or 50 crore rupees a year, and it's one of the startups from the incubator at IIT Bombay, and you know, he has only one customer because the Indian Defense Department does not want him to use any of his technologies for anybody else. So it becomes like a very symbiotic relationship, right? So it's like it's symbiosis, because it's a relationship where new products are developed as the Defense Department comes up with new requirements, and then the customer for all the stuff is the Defense Department. And this exists all over the world. For example, there are so many defense equipment suppliers in the US where they've got only one customer, which is the US government or the US Defense Department. So, you know, you can have a B2B company where you can have one customer. You can have a B2B company where you can have 1 million customers, And but most people, most companies will have between 10 and 1,000 potential B2B companies, customers. And the marketing techniques that are used when you target a B2B business that has got only one customer is totally different than the marketing techniques that you use when you target a B2B business that has got 1 million and somewhere in the middle too. So even for 10, if you only have 10 potential customers, you will use certain kinds of B2B marketing techniques. If you have 100, you'll use slightly different. If you have 1,000, you'll use slightly different. If you've got 10,000, you'll use slightly different. So there are slightly different marketing techniques that you will use depending on the number of customers, prospective customers that your business is going to have. So some of the techniques that are used for B2B marketing is inbound marketing, and where you basically do press releases, you put your posts on online, you got your videos and blogs, you write newsletters which you mail out to big mailing lists of targeted customers. So basically you leverage your content and data in order to attract the interest of businesses that would that can use your product or service, right? So that's called inbound marketing. Let's go to the next slide. Digital marketing. Digital marketing is paid search. It's expensive for B2B, and it all comes down to LTV, or long-term value of that customer. So I already gave you that example that you cannot use, Scolfin cannot use B2B paid search marketing to get consumers, but they may use paid search in order to get scholarship companies to sign up with them. Display ads, where you can target it, can also be very useful. Remarketing is extremely important because it typically costs 10 times as much to get a new customer as to get a customer who is selling your product to an existing customer. And essentially with remarketing, what you do is, even people that initially showed interest but did not buy a product, you can assume that they did not buy a product because maybe they did not need it immediately or something, but in the future they're going to need it, or they're going to need something similar. So you basically keep in touch with all of these kinds of people, and you use all these techniques for looking at online techniques that kind of allow you to understand the consumer or the browser's interest in order to target them. So in B2B marketing, there is a lot of different tools and resources that are available, and you have to go ahead and figure out which one is appropriate to you, depending on whether you have one potential customer or whether you have 1 million potential customers. But most likely it's going to be somewhere between 10 and 1,000 for most businesses. Okay, so that's all for go-to-marketing. It's an exciting space, an exciting set of slides. So what I would like from a homework standpoint is each of you prepare 2 slides about the go-to-marketing strategy and tactics you are going to use for the projects that you guys are working on. And I'd like, initially, I'd like every person on the team to do his 2 PowerPoint slides separately. And then when we do the business plan, we want all 4 or 5 of you on the team to share each other's PowerPoint slides and then come up with the best PowerPoint slide for your respective project. Okay, so the homework is to go ahead and prepare a PowerPoint slide for your project, for your go-to-marketing strategy, 1 or 2 slides, but everybody do it individually. Okay? Make sense? Okay, so the next class is on Tuesday, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so next Tuesday we'll focus on the financial side. So we'll figure out how the revenue per customer is figured out, and the profitability, and then how to forecast, and then how to come up with a financial business plan. Okay? Okay, guys, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you. Bye.